Hey guys, it's Libby and welcome to my wrap up for the months of both May and April. I was not able to make a video at the end of April because it's been really hard for me to find filming time because there's been a construction project going on about a yard beyond the window of my living room, and so it's just loud all the time. It has sucked. But now things are finally starting to slow down, so you're getting 2 wrap-ups for the price of 1 late. Let's talk about the things that I read in these 2 months. I got through 15 different works. They were 2 plays, but you can guess who wrote them. 3 novels, 1 novella, 5 short stories, and 4 magazines. Magazines of short stories. So I guess we'll just start with the plays. They were Henry VI Part 2 and Henry VI Part 3, which I was reading for the Bard Book Club. Those are both by William Shakespeare, in case you don't know. Yeah, I talked a lot about them in the Bard Book Club videos. Go watch that if you want more of my thoughts. Mostly I'd say they're, they're not terrible. They're not Shakespeare's worst plays. They are definitely not Shakespeare's best plays, though. I'd say they're probably bottom half. I gave them both 3 stars. I also finished He Knew He Was Right by Anthony Trollope. This was a very interesting experience for me. This is not my first Trollope. I believe it is my second. I think the only other one I've actually read is The Way We Live Now. So this book is very long. It's like 800 pages in many editions. And it just, I'm going to say something that sounds like an insult, but it's not. It's about so little. And I was not bothered by this. The main experience I had when I was reading the book, well, okay, let me do a plot précis first. So this is basically about a married couple. It's about a marriage, so it's not the classic story where the marriage happens at the end. Here, the marriage happens in chapter 1. Well-to-do young man from England marries a woman who is English, but her father is a diplomat in, I think, China. They keep calling them the Mandarin Islands. I don't actually know what that is. So she is English, but she has lived there for most of her life. They move back to England, have a baby, fast forward a couple of years, and now a friend of the woman's father, her name is Emily, a friend of Emily's father has come to visit them, and it's all necessary proprieties are not 100% acknowledged, and this makes the husband, Louis, jealous. At first he thinks, hello motorcycle. At first he thinks, my wife is having an affair or possibly having an affair with this man. But then, he pretty quickly arrives at the place where he doesn't think she's actually having an affair with him, but he's mad that she isn't working hard enough to prove that she's not having an affair with him. And so, he needs her, okay, you get it. And genuinely, that's the story. It's 800 pages of that dynamic between 2 people. There are a couple of subplots. There's 3 or 4 different other couples who I can't remember because I read this 2 months ago. But they are all in situations of are we gonna get married? And they are also like that for most of the book. So I expected, although I will not say I was looking forward to, something to happen or something to mix things up. But we pretty much just stuck with that dynamic the whole time. And the reason this book surprised me by never being boring in doing that. When I describe, I understand that when I am describing it now, people are like, why would I want to read 800 pages of a broken marriage? Just the same broken in the same way the whole time. Yeah, it's not boring. It's interesting. I gave it 4 stars. Now let's talk about the magazines I went through. I'm reading 4 magazines. I'm following 4 magazines of short science fiction and fantasy works, and I'm getting through like an issue of each of the 4 about every 2 months. So I'm not going to review every single short story. I'll just tell you like which ones are worth your reading. So the first one was issue 3 of Uncanny magazine from March-April 2015. The fiction section, this has both poetry and fiction. The fiction section was like surprisingly solid. The thing about short stories is that most of them are bad. And I usually either DNF or, give 2 stars to at least one short story in a magazine, per issue. But everything here got either 3 or 3.5 stars. But the real thing that I want to highlight from this issue, it was from the poetry section. It's called You Are 2.3 Meters from Your Destination by Fran Wilde. I gave this one 4 stars. It's I'm actually not totally sure that it's a poem, even though it's categorized in the poetry section. It was very clever. It was a retelling of the Orpheus myth as a set of GPS directions. Go read it. Then issue 3 of Apex magazine from 2009, August 2009, also had some pretty good ones. So starting off with Advertising at the End of the World by Keffy sorry, dyslexia setting in, Kehrli. I'm not confident about that. This was like an interesting, weird sci-fi, like near future weird sci-fi about advertising at the end of the world. And advertisements are humanoid and sort of hang around in your garden. And I believe this is like technically illegal, but doing it anyway. And it's about a widow, and like one advertisement is taking the form of her late husband. And so she just sort of befriends it. Yeah, it was cool. 4 stars to that one. And then I also fairly well enjoyed Fungal Gardens by Ekaterina Sedia. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is like a I might classify this as like on the border of horror. It's a mystery, and the mystery is around like a gross fungal infection. So if you are not interested in like body horror, avoid. But if you are up for that, I think that one's interesting. And then there was The Girl in the Basement by Matthew Kressel, which I gave a star rating of weird, because it was weird. Then taking a look at Lightspeed magazine, the August 2010 issue. Starting off with How to Become a Mars Overlord by Catherynne and Valente. I gave this one 4 stars. It reads more like nonfiction than fiction, although it is clearly fictitious. It's kind of like a passage from a history textbook about the different types of Marses. Basically, every solar system, or many solar systems, have a Mars equivalent, like, slightly farther from the sun than the most habitable planet, red, and named after a war god. And it's kind of a description of those, and then we move into like the How to Become a Mars Overlord part. I think if you enjoyed Valente's novel Radiance, you will enjoy this. Then I read Patient Zero by Tananarive. I gave this one 3 stars. This is about, this is like pandemic horror. So you maybe don't want to read it right now. But it's good to read at some point. Put that on your TBR and let it sit for a bit. Then I read Arvies by Adam Troy Castro, and I gave this one 4 stars. 4 stars for like pure cleverness. This is an exploration of the abortion argument where it's like flipped, or actually it's not flipped. It was disorienting at the beginning because it's so weird, but it's basically in a world where once you die, you're basically considered dead. Or sorry, not once you're born, you're basically considered dead. Like the only people that count are prenatal people. So that was cool. And then I started to read More Than the Sum of His Parts by Joe Haldeman, but then I got like 3 paragraphs that were a description of a bionic penis, and I was like, I'm done. Then finally I read Clarkesworld issue 3, which was from December 2006. Wow, I completely have forgotten what the other Amazon by Jenny Davidson was about. Apparently I gave it 3 stars. I also read Urchins While Swimming by Kat Valente again. I gave this one 3 stars. This is like a fairy tale inspired by Slavic folklore. If you enjoyed her novel Deathless, I would recommend this one to you. And I kind of think that maybe the characters in this kind of inspired a couple of the minor characters in Deathless. So I don't want to say anything because of spoilers, but if you've read Deathless, you can probably guess which ones based on the title. Then I moved on to some more Georgian literature, Victorian literature, the sexy British writing, Georgian literature, mostly forgotten, and deservedly so in many cases. So I read Harrington by Maria Edgeworth, which is published in 1817. I had earlier read Belinda by Maria Edgeworth, which was pretty forgettable in the grand slew of like young woman coming of age getting married novels that were published around this time. So Harrington piqued my interest because it was like it was a sort of pro-Semitic novel. The main character is not Jewish, but it's about like he was raised in an anti-Semitic household. He went to school with anti-Semitic kids, as one would expect in early 19th century England. But he like gets to actually know some Jewish people and then is like, hey, we should be nice. I gave this 2 stars because it is we have progressed so far beyond this book, and it's not good from like the plot is not intriguing, the prose is nothing special, and like it is patronizing to Jewish people. They're all like, yeah, they're a bit sort of simple, let's say, and yeah, well-meaning but worth basically no one's time. Then came Tor-a-thon, which is where I read a bunch of short fiction published by Tor.com. I made a video reviewing all of the things that I read for Tor-a-thon, so I will link that in the description, and here I will just give you the things grouped by star rating. This was not the best Tor-a-thon. Well, this is a very mediocre Tor-a-thon. Not a lot of terrible things, but also definitely not a lot of good things. So I rated nothing 4 or 5 stars. I gave 3 stars to The Cockroach Hat by Terry Bisson and Shall We Gather by Alex Bledsoe. I gave 2 stars to The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval and A Window or a Small Box by Jedediah Barry. And I did not rate No Flight Without the Shatter by Brooke Bollinger because I was bored and didn't finish it. And I also did not rate The Last of the Minotaur Wives by Brooke Bollinger because I fully did not understand it. Then last thing I finished, and also it's maybe for the best that I didn't do a wrap-up in April because most of my April was just spent reading this, and that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I actually have a physical copy of this one, so I thought I could get it for you. This is a reread for me. I wanted to re-immerse myself in the works of Susanna Clarke before Piranesi comes out this fall. Is it still coming out this fall? I know a lot of publications have been delayed because of coronavirus. Oh my god, I'll be so depressed if it is delayed. You have probably heard of this book. It is very good. I would say it's 800 and some pages. I would probably say This is certainly not the best book that I've ever read, but this is the best very long book that I've ever read. This is the best over 800 page book that I've ever read. It's probably the best over 700 page book that I've ever read too. So this is like Napoleonic War fantasy, very nerdy. You have to be into history and like history writing, like the genre of history, in order to fully enjoy this. But it's about an England where, or a world, but we're focusing on the England, where magic is no longer being practiced. It is only discussed theoretically by knobs. And we have, there is one lone practicing magician left in England, Mr. Norrell, and he's rather antagonistic towards towards theoretical magicians, but he wants to like bring magic back in a very sort of practical way. And he wants to sort of help with the war effort against Napoleon and all that. And then he gets an apprentice named Jonathan Strange who has a different approach to magic. And while this is going on, Mr. Norrell has made a deal with a fairy, which you should never do, and that all goes really bad. And, you know, they have to solve that problem and also maybe bring magic back to England. That would be great. It took me like something along the lines of 2.5 months to read this, which is better than the first time I read it, where it took me a year to read it. Although that was fine because this takes place over the course of about a decade. So reading it spaced out, it doesn't suffer from being read in a spaced out fashion. This absolutely gets 5 stars, and I recommend it to literally everyone. So that's it for this month's, this time I'm saying it like month S apostrophe instead of apostrophe S, this month's wrap up. Thank you for watching. See you guys again later.